What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Ronnie Skelton II, and welcome to my video. In all of my videos I've been making recently, I've discussed that, the phenomena that the United States government and several others, there's some noteworthy coming out of South America and Latin America. Um, this push that's really been cooking up since, Tom DeLonge into the Stars Academy, and people were getting the scoop from the United States from, around 2015 when they started to really start to produce alien disclosure. And I do think that at this point we are at a place in time where it should no longer be considered, are they there? It's more likely that yes, you can go about it being skeptical, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to say that you're a bad or stupid person if you don't believe there's a higher intelligence involved with the what is actually available and basically stated by the United States government to be unidentified anomalous phenomena. And even like with myself, I profess that basically we live as an experiment that is a hybridization DNA freshening of their gene pool of these various type of races. And we have in the ancient past spoken about basically a time where we lived amongst advanced intelligences, and our ancestors were basically a subservient class, maybe as some have suggested within Assyriology, the Lulu, literally, it's like Lu period Lu, and you have the stories of where Enki had slaughtered one of their own to basically give us some sort of essence and infused us with the lesser, or fused it with a lesser being that basically gave fashion to. Uh, with their Salim, as it says in the Bible, their image, to contain the image therein is the more accurate translation. Like it's capable of holding. So basically, the DNA helix structure, as Mauro Bellino, former Vatican translator, basically got fired from the top Vatican translating publishing house because he began to expose the monotheistic elements were not true, and he provided the original Torah and Tanakh manuscripts that he was in possession of, and was like, "Look, I'm translating this, and this is clearly a structure that's mimicking the ancient Canaanites where they developed, and the Babylonian Sumerian pantheon." And the ancients, basically, when you have Sargon of Akkad's daughter, Ida Nunana, was the great uh, publishing book literate, the first one we have of our civilization. And one of her efforts was to get the ancient traditions as they were understood from the time before the collapse, or maybe if you interpret it, the flood. And you have all of these documentations of these races that existed amongst these human type population that were, if you study the ancients, the term Adam itself, or Adama, would can mean anything of a human build. It references it in particular for the Genesis Earth Adam, giving context to perhaps the more humanoid types out there is just a type of build that these greater non-human intelligence just happen to have possession of when they manipulate genetics. Manipulating genetics is the whole point of why I went into Resident Evil, and that basically the science of it is just an ethics choice away. We have the current technology to do it. It makes sense that what of the ancient past. We take our ancients as not literal as they interpreted it themselves, but we've retroactively placed this form of intellectual psychological operations to the philosophies regarding the ancient beings. And the ancients more or less saw them as, at one time, these were amongst us. They most certainly, in their perspective, created us, and they do with us whatever they want, and we are literally a lesser class. And it looks like that even today, because the fact is, if you listen to the modern whistleblowers, like, Dr. Eric Davis, Grush, all of these people that have went and testified under oath before Congress, in the oversight committee, you really start to see that the notions of the Nordic, the reptilian, the insectoid, and the gray that he mentions, and Dr. Eric Davis mentions more. And it just mimics the most popular, I guess, in a sense that it was the most interacted with within abduction and encounter phenomena. And it reflects the greater pantheon and structure that we have that I've been trying to illustrate this whole time with my channel in recent weeks, so that you can understand that the greater intelligences that it created us are most certainly going to are making themselves known. I mean, if you take any logical step towards the non-human intelligence, it's that it it's choosing to remain secret. I think that it's the one enforcing the secrecy. It does not feel that humanity as it is ready. And I would agree to a certain extent, because when you really study it all, what people actually say and experience are an abduction phenomena, when you study history, mythology, and regular history, it makes it very eerie that we are basically a petri dish zoo hypothesis fused with a non-human intelligence collective that basically, I think, lives in dark forest theory, because that makes sense. Why would anything want to reveal itself? But that doesn't mean that it's always going to be a homogenous group. Excuse me, group. It does not mean that it's going to be homogenous of one particular advanced species. They could have caballed, or one race engineers the other. It could literally be like Prometheus in the Alien movie, some engineer type shit. So I think that there are several types that are more than just the common phenomena. I think that the blue people, Ross Coulthart be talking about it a lot lately. The idea of these blue people, and that's also reflective in the ancient traditions of like the Hindu. And I think that when we talk about them as if they are some sort of Andromedan or something else relating to the concepts of New Age and the Galactic Federations, where we get into trouble. It's like they're all saying that they're coming from intergalactic, but the truth might be more ultra terrestrial and local. It could be that we have, and I'm going to be making this video, the case for Planet X and the Nemesis system. The Nemesis system being, I think that we live in a binary system. I've been doing research into actual astronomy, and it's turning out more common that we're finding binary and trinary systems. And when you go into alternative theories, into cosmology, Velikovsky and everyone else, as much as they have steered academia to make workers and not thinkers, and let the pop academia run the show on what can be considered true, it's just left us in the dust of what we could truly be doing. And we're getting blindsided, I think, by the interfacing of the bloodline elite, the secret society factions, which can be anybody with I guess you could say, a good bloodline. And basically what you're going to have is the wealth business elites, the royal dynamics, the bloodline societies are interacting on the more higher echelon levels with an ultra terrestrial going into the heavens, and probably being some sort of system that's really more close by, and it's probably more concealed. I think that we're dealing with a system that reaps the benefits here and has created perhaps a Dyson sphere. I'm going to go into 1970s research into the trans-Neptunian objects. Some have argued that basically the anomalous data has been corrected. I think there's still something to it in all of the patterns of climate change and heating on other planets in our solar system as time has went on since the discoveries in the 1970s with the perturbing of orbits trans-Neptunian. I think that they do have a controlled system that keeps them shielded. from other more aggressive or chaotic eldritch maybe entities in space. You never know where something out there might be a Borg. I think that they stay in systems where they can harvest energy and keep it local. I think that they would cloak because I think that we would. The mere fact is, if you give humanity enough time unhindered by academic rust and truly given funding to more exotic and experimental sciences where ethics go a little bit more to the wayside and for more advanced systems, we would begin to be mimicking more or less the gods. I think that the gods and the demons, the malachim, the mythology that we have built up, uh, as a byproduct of all of the trying to tie together in peace since, Sargon of Akkad's daughter and that civilization and the study of Assyriology to get to the past of all of the non-human intelligence that were around in on Earth. And, basically to tie this up more into, I guess, a list, you've got basically what we consider grays, or more accurately, a little lizard goblin like reptilian. You go off of Philip J. Corso in the Roswell crash. You basically got uh, the 4 foot tall goblins, and the this gray itself is a skin exosuit, and the contact lenses were basically, the black eyes were contact lenses. And after we retro engineered all of the technology and integrated it into our own, you've got that group that is seen in abduction phenomena, and of course, whistleblowers such as Eric Davis have testified. You've got the Nordic types. I think those go into what the Sumerians call the Ijiji, the angel Malachim, this lesser class that was amongst everyone. I think that the non-human intelligence is in itself a caste feudal system, perhaps with a royal, like, the royal side of that. They have the Anunnaki itself, meaning the most important royal seed, or from some translations, from the heavens to the earth they came. Going into the etymology of the names itself, you just you begin to see when no matter what, when you look at the ancient past, they all had the same basic reverberations. Now they weren't exact, but they're trying to, with their own civilizations, mimic and reflect this. The Ajiji, the grays that are amongst them are a form of biorobotics. You've got the ONAs, the fish people, and the other types within Sumerian mythology, and that includes others that are like amphibious or fish-like, such as the Uana and the Apkallu. These other types that are involved with the USO, the underwater, uh, I think, are the underwater unidentified phenomena. The USOs. What would they call that? Unidentified submerged objects. Uh, you of course got the blue people that have been studied. Of course, you got the new age that say they're from Andromeda, this and that. It could be more simple, with all of these amphibious types. It could be that they're a form of amphibious fish like creature like the Zora, or there might be Zora like creatures alongside the reptilian like creatures. I mean, after all, Dr. Eric Davis like even specifies that it's not necessarily reptilian, it's just reptilian like. And that reflects some of the old ancient Sumerian and some of these creatures I've mentioned. And there's others. I mean, you've got things that could, you could argue are like a xenomorph like creature within Sumerians, talking about scorpion like creatures, things that would just be orthopods, or weird, other weird creatures of the ancient past that were dealt with or maybe brought here and seeded by these creatures, these non-human intelligence. I think that the Nordic types branch into the greater pantheon, of being the albino, the more taller albino, red-haired structure, the intermingling with the blue, having wars amongst themselves, and the Ajiji is reflective of like the Aesir Veneer Wars, the Titan versus Olympian Wars, that basically has like a regime change that happens with like in Greek mythology, ancient religion, basically, is what we're saying. We're not going to try to make it simply mythology anymore. We should treat it that this is how they saw it. So you've got the story Uranus to Cronus, which could be translated sometimes to Minerta, depending on how you look at it, of the Sumerians, and then you have Marduk or Zeus, or the he wants to pass it on to Zagreus, which has its stance in both Dionysus and rise and fall deities like Tammuz, Dumuzid in its earliest forms. So you've got the same group, the same triads. It's always a triad with these things, and they always seem to pop up in and throughout history, and the same deities are still prevalent in their modern variations and how they're interpreted and venerated today. The story of Baal Hadad, translating some as Marduk or a Zeus-like faction, or maybe the story of the Indra in Hindu, and how he is humbled and he falls and succumbs to the hubris of his arrogance and pride and so forth, and all that entails. There's this. All of these mythologies may have been what led to the idea of the Ajiti or Watchers that became renegade and rebelled. But I think that might just be a result of the fact that what would be the equivalent, as we spoke of previously several times, of the Jade Emperor in Chinese religion, could be seen in Indra's fall. This particular figure had a fall, and there was a political vacuum. You got to take into consideration that there was the Saturn or the Nerta that had the power, and Roman and Saturn, or what would be Cronus in Greek, that basically had a rebellion against Uranus or space. You can argue it that way, but there's always a way you can interpret the ancient texts, and I think that it would do a lot of humanity good to actually study and reflect upon the ancient religions and folklore of the past, because it's looking like they're trying to intermingle with us again. I do say again, I don't think this is the first time. I think that, like I said, we are a product of them. And I think that will become abundantly clear for everyone very soon. So, but soon, the people go, what do you think? I think that realistically, we're going to have some form of still dripped out disclosure. I don't think it's right around the corner. But I think that during the next decade, you will still see a stronger initiative to push the themes of UFO disclosure. Maybe towards the midterm, after the, midterms and elections are where it matters, people. So if you can get them to make that a thing, Trump maybe a wild card that does the disclosure program, he might. A lot of people are saying that. So what is for sure is the non-human intelligence wants to make itself known to us, and it's during a process of slow drip disclosure. And I contend, as I have with most of my videos, that this is merely the ancient folklore and religious phenomena finally making itself known to us again. And I think that it's cultivated us and hybridized us throughout this whole time. Earth Adam, as he is described, not us. I don't think any modern human is anything reflective of the Genesis Earth Adam, which appeared to be, if you continue with all of the readings of Assyriology, Sumerian, and Babylonian Canaanite, they engineered with the Selim, the containing the image therein of their system and their DNA, basically, or engineering through harvesting one of their own with the Inky mythos, and had fashioned into what had became a primitive red-skinned, dark-haired man. Blood red, the color of the skin was blood red, the color of the clay of the Apsu, and the woman was like them, which gives more to the idea of that they were Nordic, is that she was bright and had bright eyes and skin. She's like an albino. The idea that they're not always around light, the fact that they're even underground. People shoo the old mythology of Venus, where some of these come from, and I'm like, what if they went underground? What if they have a structure underground and that relates to the Velikovsky theory, which will be one of my next videos coming up? Like I said, the Nemesis system, the case for Planet X. Well, yeah, people, I want to wrap this up because I don't want to take too much of your time. I try to pack as much information as I can within these videos and try to make it quick and to the point. Yeah, I think we're dealing with several types that are have always been around, and they are merely choosing to reveal themselves once again to the surface population that they themselves have cultivated. And I can go into that and all the research and lore and all the testimony over the years, but I try to make it a content that's not already out there, that's at least presented in a way that's easy to digest and worth the time. So if you're still here, thank you. And be sure to like and subscribe wherever you are at, and I will catch you all on the next one.